Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Blaster Master 02. In the last part, we ventured through Area Omega is Eve alone, and after a slightly tense cutscene, we got ourselves the Andreia, a completely unique metal attacker with a completely unique move set. It has the Crusher Shot by default, so it can still destroy blocks, but everything else it has is completely unique to it within this game, including having the Blaster Master 01 SP bar still. With that said, one of the immediate benefits is that if you purify water in this area and take a dip in it, the Andreia will use its systems to completely restore your SP. Water is your best friend. Easily the most unique thing in the Andreia's moveset, though, is the water bind, which is that projectile I used a couple times there to bind those enemies in a cube of water. It does just that, it traps them in a cube of water, and you can use that cube as a platform. But you can also use it in tandem with the Spark Tackle, which is essentially the Andreia's version of the Burn Spark. It'll propel you forward, and you can push water blocks into other enemies to do even more damage. Otherwise, the Andreia has the Splash Booster, which is a mid-air double jump. You can only use it once per time you're in mid-air, though, so it's a little more limited than the double jump item was in Blaster Master 01. And it has the Wormhead missiles, which fires 3 missiles ahead of you in a roughly 45, 30 degree spread, somewhere in that range. It's the weapon, more or less, from Blaster Master 01, once again. I also think the Andreia just passively regenerates SP, but I might be wrong about that. Let's get a little more lore from Eve. Nora MA02 Andreia. Its operations are the same as the Sophia series, but it's been equipped with additional modules. A mid-air jump booster using water pressure, splash booster, and a sub-weapon that can wrap around enemies and create platforms, a water bind. It can even move enemies that have been trapped with Spark Tackle. While Andreia is submerged in clean water, it'll recover SP as well. I wonder if the planet Elfie landed on was filled with water. And the Earth wasn't? The power to stop mutants in their tracks is manifested inside me. For now, I'll call this power Unchained DDF. If I use it to counter mutants, it'll stop them from moving. Then there's the eye hicks on my right arm. We made it to support my physical functions as my body was corrupted, but now it's able to purify any mutant it touches. I can stop the mutants with Unchained DDF, then purify them with eye hicks. I don't know how this happened, but now I can fight the mutants, but most importantly, now I can save Jason. Indeed we can, Eve. Interdimensional space. It seems to be the interval between each and every dimensional space. This looks like the mutants' nest. Is this where they invade from? If I can get this data to Sophia, there could be a breakthrough. Of course, first priority is rescuing Jason and escaping this place. Finding water to use for Andreia's energy system will be crucial. If the mutants have polluted the water, I can purify the source of the pollution with eye hicks and clean the water. Then when I enter the clean water with Andreia, it should be able to restore its SP. Thank you, Elfie. Without you, I wouldn't have had the bravery I needed to do this. Now, I'm not going to get into full detail with this, but the names Roddy and Elfie are actually recurring names in the series. That is namely a reference to the characters you play as in Blaster Master Blasting Again on the PlayStation 1, a game I'll get to at some point. For now, since we actually have the Andreia, we need to refight the Capel. There's a reason it didn't explode when we were first here. We just stunned it with Eve. But now that we have Andreia, we can very easily dispatch this thing. Water bind's your best friend here, but also make sure you use the Spark Tackle just to potentially knock it into other variants of itself. So at this point in Area Omega, what you want to do is largely up to your discretion. There are item pickups here that can power up the Andreia, but you don't need them for the true ending. I'm getting them for true 100%, but if you ever just want to go to the end of the game, go to that marked tile that was just on the map a moment ago, and then go to the one that gets marked after that. We are finishing the game today no matter what. This section is relatively short all the same. But if you want to have an easier time with what's coming up, I do recommend grabbing as many items as you can along the way. And thankfully, since Area Omega is relatively small, you don't need to worry too much. It might have seemed a little long when we were walking through it as Eve last time. But that's just it. You were walking through it, but now we have a fully armed battle tank. So, another benefit I haven't talked about with the Unchained DDF blast counter is that here we got the returning dimensional distortions from Planet DeVito. Unchained DDF can just stop those from existing during its duration. So, you can just walk straight through them and find your way through this maze to get to the HP up for the Andreia that's on the top right of this map. Also, since I in general like to mention when this series shouts out earlier Blaster Master lore, the Andreia's model number, Nora MA02, that is not the first time that's been used in the series. Back in Blaster Master Enemy Below, they slightly redesigned the Sophia III and gave it that model designation at that point. but by and large, that's about as deep as that goes. Enemy Below is a game I might cover at some point, but it's the only one I have as a maybe for this series. If only because it is, by and large, just a Game Boy Color port of Blaster Master 1. But at the same time, like, I could do that instead of doing a replay of Blaster Master to get my thoughts more on Blaster Master 1 out, while also talking about the port's very minor differences. So a second ago, we got a life up in this section. That's the entire reason we came to this cave. Whenever you find a life up for the Andreia in this section, it is twice as strong as the life ups you get for the Sophia. It gives you 2 HP. Because they only had enough space to make like 4 or 5 items for you to pick up, which, you know what? Valid, I get you. Now, last time, if memory serves, I said I wasn't the hottest on this entire section of my first playthrough, and I think this particular latter portion of it especially just kind of soured me even more. Because yes, it's not as hard as the first portion where you're just Eve, but it felt like an unnecessary backtrack for items that I feel like I didn't really need, even though you probably should grab them anyway because the final boss can be a little rough. I think what it could be is I was just growing frustrated with the game at this point, and I needed the time to cool off on it. Because 0-2 I liked at release, but I liked 0-1 more. Because to me, when 0-1 released, the Metroidvania connected world elements was a pretty big thing that I liked out of it, and I really wasn't looking at what 0-2 did to refine what 0-1 was. Especially on the combat aspect, I was looking all at the exploration and only using the level 8 wide buster without looking at what they did to all the other gun levels to make them more useful and make the toolkit of Jason's moveset be more interesting. I guess in a way I just literally expected Blaster Master 01 mechanically again, just with a different map. And with especially first sequels, you really shouldn't expect one-to-one the same ideas, because they're just going to refine what they really liked and probably cut out or reduce what they didn't like in development. And that's kind of where my modern mindset even kind of evolved from with games, where when something's maybe not exactly meshing with me, I try to step back and look at the mechanic to be like, okay, I don't like this, but what is the developer wanting me to do with it? And that can do a lot to help me experiment in games and figure out what really makes me comfortable and what the devs are actually looking for. Because as a kid and growing up, I was very steadfast in doing one particular thing in basically any game I could. And nowadays, some games you gotta shake it up, because otherwise the games aren't gonna behave with you. Because in that regard, you're not meeting them at that midway point to try and see what the game actually plays like. And that mindset can also do a lot, I think, to help approach games that play differently from the rest of their series instead of immediately just writing them off. Like, if memory serves, I remember a lot of people just kind of writing off Battle Network and Star Force, and even Mega Man Legends back when. Whereas now those are all very beloved because people went back and approached them on their own ground. That life up's very easy to miss. Is that Fred? He's alive. Thank goodness. Hang in there, I'll get you energy. Now I'll be able to figure out where Jason and GAIA-SOPHIA are. That's one of Fred's functions as a support animal, after all. With Fred here, I should be able to pinpoint their locations. This signal. Jason is near GAIA-SOPHIA. I can check their location on the map. Hold on a bit longer, Jason. And now we can head towards Endgame. You may have noticed there was a cave we passed on the way here that actively looked like it was blocked off. That's because it was. You couldn't grab that. You couldn't enter it until you grabbed Fred. Speaking of Fred, let's see what Eve has to say about grabbing him. Fred, you're looking much better. Thank goodness. Thanks to Fred, I can pinpoint GAIA-SOPHIA and Jason's exact location. I can even double check it at any time on the map, but I wonder why Fred turned silver once we got into space. Huh. Outer space really is mysterious. Yeah, I don't even know if I mentioned that. Fred was green back in 0-1, but now in 0-2 and 3, he's silver, and they never address why to my memory in either of them. I do admit I like his design better when he's silver, but it's still kind of weird. Yeah, that mindset about, like, approaching games in their own ground is why, even though I don't like them mechanically, I can acknowledge the strengths of things like the newer Paper Mario games prior to the Thousand Year Door remake. Do I think those are still worse than the first 3? Yes. But they still have their values, and to completely ignore those is unfair to them. That's the kind of mindset I've just evolved over the years. On top of that, I've always kind of had this mindset, I think I've talked about this in other LPs, where no matter how radically different a game it is from the rest in the series, if the title is shared, it's part of that series to me. And I think Mega Man and Mario especially helped hammer that into me growing up, because Mega Man has the 2 RPG spin-offs, the action-adventure spin-off, instead of just being a platform the entire time. And Mario, of course, no one really seems to question Mario spin-offs in that same way, which I've always found kind of interesting. The Paper Marios like that are a good example of that, even though, again, still prefer the older ones, don't get me wrong. And, what else is a good example of that that's not, like, the ones I've directly mentioned? You know what? Final Fantasy, I guess, because it has a lot of spin-offs that people don't immediately question, but at the moment 16 wasn't directly a turn-based game, they started going wild, to the point where not many people talk about 16 as actively nowadays on, like, social media. Not because they have forgotten the game, in most cases, but because talking about the game just invites this atmosphere of unpleasantness that it just drained people of it by the looks of it. And don't get me wrong, I didn't think 16 was perfect, but I still thought it was fun. There are more in-depth action games, but also, like, not many action games get to have that much money in its set pieces. So it's like, meet it halfway in the middle. Going back to the game, I never quite understood why that Octobibby was there. Because the boss fights in here otherwise are pretty much all unique. So having the one reused boss out of nowhere just feels a little weird. Maybe it's in the case they thought you weren't ready and that was there to be like sort of a power check. Like, okay, if you're having trouble with this, you should probably go back and get those health ups or something. Always felt a little weird. This is probably the most annoying platforming section, barring the one life up above Fred in all of Area Omega. If only because it requires a little bit more precision with the water bind than anywhere else in the area, really. But it's also only for those 2 jumps, because we're coming up on the final checkpoint in the game. If you don't have all the Andreia's power-ups, I recommend going back and getting them right now. I can't believe it. Jason! He's next to a giant mutant. Has he been turned to stone? Did that mutant do this? Jason's vital signs are weak, but they're still there. He's still alive, thank goodness. That must be what Elfie told us about. The mutant cocoon! Its energy reading is unbelievably terrifying. This thing must be collecting energy from the entirety of dimensional space. The mutant overlord, Planadji, every mutant we've fought so far. Do they exist just to send energy here? Are they part of this system? That must be why they began their invasion. The invasion that will destroy all dimensional space. Jason must have tried to fight it. He tried to protect the universe all by himself. Jason, I'll fight too. I'll defeat that thing. I will save you. Welcome to the mutant cocoon, Revo, which might sound like a weird letter vomit, but it's just Overlord spelled backwards. Andreia's normal attacks can't reach it from here. Even if they could against such a massive enemy, Andreia's attacks would have no hope of doing any real damage. Wait, what if I use the mutant cocoon's attacks against it? With water bind, I can wrap up its attacks, and while they're wrapped up, I can use Spark Tackle to... The reason I'm doing that is because on the first playthrough, myself and several others got stuck on this fight and couldn't figure out how the hell to fight this thing. Attack-wise, Revo only really has 2, both involving the green eyeballs spinning around it. It can send some to the top of the screen, in which case they will glow and then fire a gigantic laser downwards that does some pretty decent damage. And then after that, it'll send more eyeballs out in a wave formation that will spawn bubbles that you can then water bind and Spark Tackle to then damage the main body. I can't do it. Andreia can weaken it, but I can't do decisive lethal damage. My only chance is the Axel Blast, but since Andreia's frame is damaged, that function's locked. Even if I could use it, I'd only get 1 shot, but the Axel Blast plus my purification power might just be enough. I just need enough time to charge the Axel Blast to full.
You just leave that to us.
The receiver? Is that Ganbei?
And he's not alone, young lady.
Flower! Hi, Evie! Naturally, we support droids at present as well. Long time no see, Eve. We're coming to save you.
But how?
Some guy named Laban has called us up and told us everything. He told us how the markers worked and that you were in danger.
So yeah, like wormholes, right? We can totally use those and go straight there, like bam! You just gotta hang in there till we can get there, you hear?
Thank you all so much. It wasn't all for nothing after all. The people we met, the time we spent with them. This is the result of our journey. No matter what, I won't give up. Everyone's on their way. I'll do what I can to weaken the mutant cocoon until they get here. So at this point, the boss pattern continues. And you are, I think at this point, just on a timer rather than on an HP gate system. You still do want to do some damage here just to potentially avoid taking damage yourself in most cases. But prioritize dodging as best you can. Just keep in mind that if you look down the bottom right, Droll Revo's health is slowly regenerating. It's just at such a rate that it's actually very hard to notice unless you're actively looking at it. To the point where I actively didn't notice it was regenerating until someone pointed it out in a YouTube comment section on some other LP of the game I was watching in like 2019, 20, somewhere in that range, maybe in 2021. The attack pattern does get a little more aggressive from this point on, where more bubbles will get spawned, and if you leave the bubbles alone long enough, they do become a spread shot that just sends projectiles out in a circle, which can be kind of hard to avoid if there's some just stacked up on top of each other. But something I think you can do to avoid damage, especially from the lasers, is just stay in the pools of water that are purified, because I don't think the lasers technically penetrate down into that. Also, yeah, the Andreia has an Axel burst. I didn't talk about that earlier because you can't use it under normal circumstances in this section. You can only use it with what's about to happen. It stopped. Now's my chance.
Whoa, we got here just in time, didn't we? So good to see you, Evie Weevie.
Now's not the time for catching up. We gotta protect the young lady. Roger.
Yeah, I'm getting totally serious. I'm gonna show you what I'm made of.
Thank you, everyone. All right, everyone. I need your help. Now's our only chance to defeat it. Axel Blessed Override Lock. I'm so sorry, Elfie. This might destroy Andreia.
Don't worry, Eve. Andreia and I will surely live on in your heart.
Thank you, Elfie. Leave this to me. I'll take this purification energy welling up inside my body and pour it all into Andreia. Hope y'all like button mashing. Jason, is he? He's back to normal. Have I witnessed a miracle? Or is it due to the purification energy added to the Axel Blast? Thank you, Eve. I must have put you through a lot. Jason! You sure did! Jeez, I can't believe you. Sorry, Eve. I'll make it up to you another time. But for now, it seems our fight isn't over yet. Huh? You damned mutant cocoon. So this is your true form. Let's finish this. I couldn't do it before, but now I'm not alone. By my side and in my heart. Eve is here and my comrades. Let's go, GAIA-SOPHIA! The boss fight against Droll Revo Mastro can be pretty complicated because there's several attacks that actively have different effects depending on whether or not the boss is charging them up or not. For the first 20% of its health or so, though, you're not going to need to worry about the charged effects because it's not using them. You'll know the boss is actively charging them depending on whether or not it has a glowing rainbow fire around it. For instance, its purple attack, when it's normal, it just fires 3 projectiles directly in a row at you. If it's charged, they're larger. The other attacks do vary quite a bit more, but just be careful of it when it's actively in its supercharged state like this, because it's going to marathon through as many of its attacks as it can before being tired out and then not doing anything. Use this moment to charge up your own full Excel burst to as high of a state as you can, and then use it immediately when it's gray, because you can take out a large majority of its health by doing that, if not instant killing it with a fully supercharged Excel blast. If anything, Area Omega itself is the boss fight here. Droll Revo is just a victory lap. We've successfully exited interdimensional space. Is that... Planet Sophia. We finally made it. So this is your home planet, Eve. After we thanked everyone for fighting by our side, we made our way back to the regular space to see our journey through. Gombe, Stein, Kana, and all the support droids, thank you. Before we knew it, our destination was right before our eyes. I'm feeling better already. That's right, whether it's due to the changes Eve experienced in interdimensional space, or perhaps the powerful Exile Blast she unleashed that cleansed my petrification, whatever the reason, the mutant infection in Eve's body is gone. We started this journey in order to save Eve. In the end, we achieved our goal before even reaching our destination. Our journey was one unexpected thing after another, but the most unexpected development of all happened right at the end, huh? I'm sure it's no coincidence. We never gave up. We faced every challenge we met. I believe this is the result of everything we went through. Eve. Our battles with the mutants and all the friends we met. If we were missing even one thing, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't be here together with you, Jason. By the way, Jason, I have something I want to tell you. And that's Blaster Master 02. I think this game's great. At release, I honestly didn't like it as much as the first game because I liked the Metroidvania elements more in that game, but the more I've experimented around with the combat in this one, there's just so much more going on in this game that makes it a better experience, I think. Honestly, I think the games just got better as they went through in both boss patterns and combat depth. Even if they removed some elements that I was fond of in the first game, like the interconnected world. I cannot recommend these games enough. The biggest strike against the game, I think, is its somewhat inconsistent difficulty even as you go through, particularly with the planetoids, because if you do them all as early as you can, there's going to be times where they throw a lot at you that can be very overwhelming for the amount of health or weapons you have at that point. And then there's ones where they just, I think, expect a little too much precision out of you with how the game controls them. Looking at you, ladder planetoid. But the main levels, I think, are incredibly solid. I think maybe some of them needed one or two more notes of depth, particularly Planet DeVito needed something besides the dimensional distortions and ice physics. And maybe, off the top of my head, Flo Santa maybe needed a couple more rooms to make a revisit more interesting down the line. But that's about it. Anything else, and I'd just be nitpicking on the whole. This is a very tightly designed package, I find. I will probably cover the DLC campaign that's Kana Racing Simulator as a separate LP down the line whenever I pick that up. And when I do that, like I said before, I'll probably just do a little bonus video for the main LP here to cover Copen and Empress's abilities in depth. And at that point, I'll probably go back to 01 and do the same for that game's bonus characters. But there's a lot to love in 02 on the whole. It's not my favorite in the trilogy. I think nowadays that is the third game, even though that's the one I've played the least, just because I think that's such a solid conclusion to the trilogy. But what we got here is incredible. I'm not sure what Blaster Master game I'm going to cover next, though. It's not going to be 03, because I'd rather end with that. So that means we're either going to do a replay of the first game through Enemy Below, I'm finally going to play Blasting again, or I will tackle the WiiWare game. But we'll see it when we see it, essentially. Also want to look back and remark that this has been an interesting LP behind the scenes because I've actively been experimenting with the audio processing, of course, for like the comms stuff. I'm probably not going to do that in every LP moving forward, but I want to try it every here and there just to experiment and see if I can make things more interesting to watch or to edit. Because I like experimenting here and there behind the scenes to make things either look better or flow better. And I think this does help with cutscene presentation a little bit, but that also might just be me putting too much effort in and wanting to recognize my own efforts. Either way, don't get used to it, but it'll show up every here and there. Also, I love this ending image. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, have a great night, take care, and I'll see you guys next Let's Play, whatever that may be. See you guys then!
This is Earth. Jason Frutnik, please respond. mutants have attacked. We need your support. GAIA-SOPHIA, please respond. Repeat, this is Earth.
Unbelievable. What a truly hilarious situation. They haven't noticed at all that his home planet's in trouble. Earth, the planet they once saved. I wonder how he'll feel when I'm the big hero this time around. I hope it drives him crazy. Let's go, Lucia.